Welcome in, DeMarcus. How are you doing tonight, my friend?
I'm good, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a pretty good Saturday. I mean, the weather's not bad, not raining, can't complain, right?
Right. Yeah, it's pretty chilly here, but I mean, to be quite honest with you, anything's better than like 115. So,
Yeah, I'll take
and
that
you're in
cold.
Dude, you're in South Mississippi, I think. So, I mean,
Yep, yep, yep.
it's not even
Yeah,
it's not a mystery to you.
the clouds hit over here. It hasn't been much sunlight, unfortunately. Usually it's pretty nice, but not so far. Where I lived in Arkansas previous, right in the middle of the state, man. It was a little rough for the weather with it going back and forth and back and forth. So it's
Yeah.
almost mimicking that.
Yeah, it does that here too. We're kind of in that same little zone where, I mean, today it's freezing cold. Tomorrow you'll be walking around in shorts.
Yep.
So,
Well,
yeah.
contributor DeMarcus, man, it's great to have you on. Tell me, where are you coming from, and how is life your way, man?
Okay, I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Got you.
So, yeah, fellow Southerner. Life's treating me pretty good. I'm out next week. I'm a Spanish teacher by trade, and me, the students, all the parents, we're all looking forward to the fact that we're going to be out next week and kind of get to decompress a little bit. But I'm a workaholic too, so I'll be working on something school related anyway.
If you're a teacher, you're definitely a
Yeah,
workaholic, my
yeah. We
friend.
don't ever get off. So
No, sir. People say the summers, but I know the truth on that. So,
yeah.
well, I mean, in terms of let's talk about you a little bit before we get into any kind of the research you've done. And it's great research, by the way. It's totally data driven. There's not really much opinion that can be laid out in this research. It is what it is. So
Right.
definitely look forward to hearing more about that. But like I said, let's hear about you, man. You're a Spanish teacher. How long have you been teaching?
About 12 years. So yeah,
Wow.
and I didn't even grow up speaking Spanish. I taught myself in my 20s. I just kind of randomly found out that I had an interest in languages. I kind of had to look around for different resources and found a couple of good resources and actually started dating somebody, and she didn't speak any English at all. So that helped. I
That's
had to
one
get
way to
that.
do it.
That's one way to do it. That'll help. So
Y'all, so I mean, I guess there's not a language barrier anymore. I'm guessing you got it down.
yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, the types of relationships you can build when you know more than one language is it's wonderful. It opens up a whole new perspective on how to see things, which is kind of related to some of the other stuff I'm doing and even what I did with the research there. But just a little bit more about me. I also have an online education community that me and my business partner ran called assignmentstogo.com. Um, and it's not sports related, but it's something that we do for to create an atmosphere for students to learn about entrepreneurship, personal development, academics, things like that. So I'm also involved in that. But what we're talking about today, this is an unexpected passion for me. The XFL is. I always knew I was going to want to watch it, but I didn't expect to get so immersed into it because watching football was never the X's and O's kind of guy. I didn't break down routes and things like that and keep up with people's numbers and things like that. I just wanted to watch a game. But something about seeing a new league, a renewed league, so let's put it that way. Something about seeing a new endeavor take off and it not just be smooth sailing, and you have to kind of figure out what's going on. And on top of that, two leagues that really are, I don't want to say that they're struggling, but the market is definitely not exactly what they probably thought it was going to be. And so they're now saying, hey, look, we're probably going to have to hold hands and do this together. Well, what is that going to look like? How do you measure the assets of one versus the assets of another to see what's going to make the best combination? We can say what we want to say as fans. I mean, if you're a USFL homer, you'd be satisfied if they just closed the XFL down and just went with USFL. And likewise with the XFL, I mean, if you don't watch the USFL, you don't care what happens to those teams. But if
Exactly.
we're going to be together, we're going to come in this together and make a spring league that's going to last. Well, we got to get to know each other, and we got to get to know where our strengths and weaknesses are. And that's one of the things that I think I wanted to try and do with this. Yeah, it's a little bit of wanting to be able to talk shit. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, but I like the whole idea of seeing a business grow, and I want to know what are they thinking about? What are they looking at? What makes them lose sleep at night? What are they hanging their hat on? What do they think is going to work? I want to know those things, but also I'm kind of one of those people that sort of like I believe in advocating. I always tell my students that you vote in different ways. You don't just vote at the ballot box. You vote with your dollars too. You vote with your attention. You vote with your time. You vote with where you choose to live in life. So, in a sense, as consumers, we are voting for this spring league. And we have a right to say, okay, if I'm going to continue to give this my time and attention, this is kind of the way I want to see it. Because that business is going to understand eventually whether or not they made the right decisions. Because people are either going to keep watching, they're going to come out to the game, they're going to engage on social media, or they're going to pull back. And so I kind of wanted to do this research to see if I were in their shoes, what decision would I make? And then I can compare that to the decision that they make. Because even if they cut a team that, let's just say they do cut a team, they may not. Let's just say they cut a team that I like. I at least want to be able to understand this is why they did that.
Understood. And I mean, like I said, the data you're pulling and speaking of, it's not like this isn't just an opinion. This is you going and getting these numbers physically and saying, okay, here it is compiled. And to be honest with you, it is really surprising that with all of the things that is happening, someone hasn't done this yet. I mean, just to be honest with you, it's awesome stuff, man. But it's like, it's one of the most obvious metrics we can look at in a whole to gauge who's more popular in reality. And so that's why I really enjoyed your stuff, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm pretty sure they've got some internal stuff that they're looking at. I mean, they're not necessarily putting it out there for everybody to see, but that was kind of my surprise too. I mean, I've got a few surprises. I've wondered why, how come there are no polls that they're putting out to just ask people, hey, what do you guys want us to do? Give us some scenarios and we'll come up with the best one.
Those can easily be sent to season ticket holders, like email. That's an easy go. But yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. But that goes back to what I was saying, that when it's all opinion, both sides have to understand that their side has a weakness. Their side has something that is not either doing well yet, or something that maybe needs to stop. So, for instance, the XFL's weakness is it's expensive. I think what the XFL is doing in terms of getting into those markets and building the fan base, I think at some point you got to do that. Even the USFL, people talk about XFL's business model, USFL's business model. Both leagues, we're going to have to do what the XFL is doing right now at some point anyway. Because if you're going to get those hub teams out of the hubs on the USFL side, you're going to have to go in those markets and engage with those fans. And you don't necessarily know that when you go to go into, say, New Jersey or Philadelphia or New Orleans, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen. You don't know how those people are going to turn out. So the model of engaging with fans was something that was going to happen anyway. However, it's expensive. You got to really be willing to shell out that money to get it done first. And that's what happens with any business. I don't care if you're building lawnmowers. I don't care if you're building houses. The people that build houses, they got to put the money up to get that house built first.
Exactly.
And then when they sell it, they can make their money back. So, it's a situation where and when do we think this will take off and become self-sufficient? So.
Well, today we won't really get too good of an idea of that, but we can gauge where the money would be better placed.
Exactly.
So it makes sense. And so that's what I really want to, highlight is we throw money away on things that don't matter and that don't have a brand following. I mean, you're throwing your money away. It's not coming back.
Exactly.
Let's get some comments real quick and we'll come back to it. Okay. I just want to touch on some comments. We got Brahma Babe. Brahma Babe was one of the super fans that was in Houston today. And speaking of that, I'm going to go ahead and show that right now. So Brahma Babe said, hey, on the road back to San Antonio from Houston. So she was one of the front runner super fans that actually went to Houston versus Oklahoma State today. They had a tailgate. Pretty good little event, man. They garnered, I think, 200 more signatures on their petition to keep Houston Roughnecks in Houston. But let me see. Let me find it. Here it is. So I'll show the pictures first and I'll go to the video.
Yeah, I can see.
But very well-known super fans here. And Brahma Babe, even she's from San Antonio and drove down is what's real nice. There's Miss
awesome.
Predator. Yep, she's hanging out. You can see her petition QR scanner there. I'd be curious to see who all they got from that. And, the funny thing is I think you can actually use this on, like, this picture as well, It can be used.
Yeah, you can pick it up off of that picture.
So that's what's sweet.
Yeah. But they got to get they got to get people buying season tickets too, though. That's another way to send a message. If you really want to send a message that this is the team that we want, get season tickets.
No doubt. And my thing is, I think those fans are just they're a little scorned from the last run around. And then the thing about it is they don't even know if they're going to be there next year. We don't have an official release.
Right. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I did find. That was, as a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up because that was also one of my motivations. That okay, you have two teams in the same market. How do you know which one to pick? And so I said, well, let me look at some of the metrics and see if anything suggests that picking one over the other would make sense. And it really wasn't a big surprise to me that there wasn't really any way that I looked at this where the Gamblers were the more popular team.
Understood.
Houston Roughnecks have a better rating on television. They have more social media followers, and you can point to people that have actually showed up to the games. It's one thing you can't say with the Gamblers. I mean, do you know for a fact that more people are going to show up for the games when the Gamblers start? And to be quite honest with you, if I'm an exec, I mean, if you're going to make a mistake on a team, which one do you want to make? You want to be able to say, hey, look, I had all this data over here. I had 3 times the social media followers for this team. I had fans in the stands. I thought this one would work. Or would you say, hey, I ignored all that and I just picked a team that hadn't been in the market in 40 years? So,
yeah, man. I mean, I think it's all relevant, and it's all hard questions that super fans and fans alike don't really want to talk about because, I mean, you're either going to win or lose. And right now we don't know who is winning or losing. And it sucks that we think of it that way. But, I mean, this is life, and that's how a lot of things go.
So if you want to kind of get into it now, I have I started the article out talking about my power rankings. So basically what I did, I took all the data, and it's a lot of data, it's a lot of graphs and things like that. And I said, okay, I've got to be able to aggregate all of this together so that it gives a sort of a final picture of what the strengths of the spring league teams are. And so I started out the article with that. And yeah, it's on the screen there. So you have top 4. And basically, just so you'll know, we'll be talking about this. I established this by dividing the league into quarters. Okay, you have 16 teams, so that's 4 teams in each quarter.
Okay.
And I look at 9 different metrics. And I look at those 9 metrics as kind of like a contest, where depending on where you land in that contest, you get a certain number of points. So, for instance, you have internet search, social media. You have television performance, which I divide that into 6 different dimensions. All right. Then you have attendance. All right. And once you break all of that apart, I then look, well, how are these teams ranking when you look at each one of those dimensions? And you get certain points for how you land with that. So the result came back that the top 4 spring league teams are DC, Arlington, Birmingham, and St. Louis.
And this is the power rankings is what you're dubbing that? Okay.
Yes. And this is not based on how they did last season in terms of
I understand. Just for clarification.
Engagement. Yep. Yeah, you divide engagement up into direct engagement and casual engagement. Direct engagement is going to be things that the business is actually looking for. They're looking for people watching the product. They're looking for people to come to the game and actually buy tickets and things like that. That's direct. Casual engagement is everything else: social media, internet searches, things like that. And just so you'll know, I weighted the direct engagement as being double that of the casual engagement. So in other words, when you look at the rankings there's not anybody that has a high ranking just because of social media or just because of internet search. I mean, that's not why they're running the business. They want to make money.
Yes, sir.
All right. So top tier: DC, Arlington, Birmingham, St. Louis. Second tier: Houston Roughnecks, Michigan, Seattle, and Memphis. Now, I will tell you that Michigan surprised me. I might be a person that's a little out of the loop, but I had no idea. Coming from the South, there are three football powers that you know of. It's Texas, California, and Florida. Right? Those are the ones you hear about all the time. But I really honestly, Michigan, and not just because of the Panthers, Michigan is right up there too in terms of their tradition.
Understood.
But when they put the Panthers in their home stadium, it's too bad that they don't have attendance figures, because by a lot of different metrics, the Panthers are a very, very strong team, and they were able to leapfrog even some of your legacy XFL teams from 2022, like Seattle. So you've got Michigan there, followed by Seattle, followed by Memphis. Again, very impressive for a team that's in its first year and in its home market the first year, for it to be able to leapfrog all the other teams. I think that's really saying something. I think that also says that the power of being in your home market is something that, I mean, for Memphis to be number 8 in its first year, and it's not even close in terms of where they are versus those hub teams. I think that lets you know that's the power of direct engagement.
That is true, but much like Birmingham, Memphis has a football history. Mm-hmm. And being like an AAF fan, which I was back in the old days, 2018, 19, whatever. I mean, there was a following for them, and it wasn't great football. It wasn't great weather either. It was terrible. But I tell you, I mean, there was still a lot of asses in them stands.
Right.
So I can see this just knowing that area and being from there. I can really, but, in Michigan as well, that's a hot name. And like USFL, you hear that often. And just like you said, college, it's like, you can see how those two relate and really, they cling to each other in popularity. So
I didn't put it in the document, but I ran the numbers on, NFL engagement and the college football engagement, size of the market, and things like that. And so that's why I say that Michigan's a really strong market. They're strong all the way across the board. I mean, when you look at, not to get into NFL, but the Detroit Lions, I mean, their rankings in terms of viewership, I mean, they were second last year. So, I mean, and this is despite the fact that they're not, this year they're pretty good, but I mean, before past, say, 10 years, I mean, it's not like they've been, Super Bowl contenders, but those people really do support their football up there.
Yep.
The reason why I say Memphis surprised me is that, they may have a strong tradition there, and I say this for Birmingham too, although Birmingham wasn't as much a surprise. If you look at those hub teams, there are a lot of bigger cities among those. And so for them to still be ahead of cities that are much larger than them, and it's their first year, I think that's saying something.
Agreed on that.
To that team. So
people are hungry for that in Memphis, so I'm telling you, that's a nice field and facility there, in my opinion. In Memphis, I mean, I love the Liberty Bowl Stadium. That's one of my favorites growing up. Been a lot. So yeah, I could definitely that one hits home for me. And like I said, and this is me speaking frankly, regardless of being a fan of either sport, So let me ask you, in terms of, I mean, you dubbed this. Let me go back. I'm trying to make sure I have it right. Measuring spring football fandom, a quick look at XFL and USFL 2023 engagement stats. So in total, when you did this research, I mean, how long did it take you to gather these numbers?
Oh, it didn't. I mean, some of these numbers are kind of easy to find. The viewership numbers are out there. You've got to crunch them though. And I'll talk about that. I guess we can go ahead and talk about that. When you talk about the viewership data, you're going to find raw viewership averages there. So you'll find figures that say, this is what the XFL did for the whole season, right? Or you'll find numbers that say this is what each team averaged, right? But one of the things that we have to understand with television distribution is that you're not always comparing apples to oranges. I mean, apples to apples.
I understand.
And in this case, it's apples to oranges in a lot of ways. So let me give you an example. The USFL had two types of distributions, basically. You had over the air, and then you had cable channels, right? I give some of those cable channels a nickname. I call them bad weather channels because it's hard to get a win on those. And I'm talking about your cable channels that are not regular ESPN. I'm talking about your USA and your FX
Fox
channels that people don't even think about when it comes to watching anything sports.
Oh, so you're talking about like off, like FX and such.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
So the USFL basically distributed its games only in those two different dimensions. And the XFL had a third dimension, which was regular ESPN, which really doesn't fit in. It's not over the air. It's not as bad as some of those bad weather channels, but it's kind of in the middle. And you'll be able to see on the document that, it's not a predictor. ESPN is a strong network, but it wasn't a predictor of where the XFL was going to get good ratings. I mean, some of the ratings on ESPN were every bit as low as some of the games on FX.
Matt Rice said TBS.
But so when you're trying to compare the two, you have to be able to split apart. Okay, let's take the over-the-air games. All right, so that we're comparing over-the-air to over-the-air. Let's take the bad weather channel games, and let's just compare those. Let's take primetime games, and then let's split those up as well, because you had some primetime games that were on bad weather channels, as I call them, and then you had primetime games that were on over-the-air channels. And so how each league performed when you break apart all of the differences and you just look at what's similar, then you get a more accurate picture of how they can compete.
On this data here, let's stop at this point. Is that on here? Is that what you're talking about, those numbers? I just want to kind of line it up.
Yeah, you need to keep scrolling down.
Tell me when to stop.
Yeah, keep going. A little bit more. Yeah, pass all those graphs up right there. Keep going.
Here we are.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's stop right there. So when you look at just raw total viewership, this is not disaggregating for anything. This is just, we took the numbers and you just add them all up. You see that the USFL has the top three spots, right? Then followed by Arlington, San Antonio, St. Louis. And then you see the hub teams are toward the bottom, right? A lot of people just stop there. They just say, these are the ratings. Okay, but scroll down just a little bit. All right. If we just look at over the air only, now who's in the lead? What league has the higher over the air games that were rated? You see basically 5 XFL teams there. That wasn't going to be borne out by just the raw viewership total. And the reason why you want to look at a stat like that is that, let's say they move all of the games over to over the air. That particular metric there might be more indicative of how the teams might do.
Understood.
Because they're actually, because we're looking at how they perform on that one network, on that one type of distribution. When you look at the top one, when you look at the raw total average and you see that, for instance, Seattle was way down at 15. Well, something explains why Seattle is that low. Yeah, and so, in a lot of situations, and we'll talk about this in a second, the prime time distribution, if you scroll down just a little bit, the prime time distribution had a lot to do with that. The USFL had more games that were prime time and over the air than the XFL did.
A lot more from this.
A lot more. So, I mean, just in over the air, the USFL had 29 games that were over the air, whereas the XFL only had 8. That's going to make a big difference. You're not comparing the same thing when you're talking about a league that only had 8 games over the air versus one that had 29. The USFL had 9 games that were prime time and over the air. That's a golden ticket spot.
That's a big ratio difference as well.
Yeah, it is. And I think that speaks to why that when you look at numbers like this, you understand why, for instance, Daryl Johnson said that he was so disappointed because when your league has that many more over the air games and that many more prime time over the air games, and the final result is that you're still about even. The example that I like to use, let's just say you and I are pushing two couches across the room, and they're the same everything, same size, same weight, everything. And somebody comes in and says, somebody comes in after the fact, and they go, okay, their couches are around the same. They got them about the same distance across the room. But then you peel it back and you find out that I had to push the couch 15 more times and I had to take an energy drink to get it to the same spot you got. Then now that lets you know, okay, we're probably not about equally strong. You're probably stronger than I am because I had to put more into it just to get the same distance out of it. And so what you're seeing here is that, yeah, the USFL and the XFL ended up somewhere about even in terms of total averages, but look at what the USFL had to put into that just to get that average. And so that explains why, let's just say the XFL came knocking and saying, hey, let's merge. That explains why the USFL, said, yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Give us that, please,
yeah,
please.
because
Yeah.
let me tell you something. The USFL could not afford for the XFL to end up with their kind of distribution.
Because if they did,
this wouldn't have been close. And it wasn't supposed to be close. When you have a distribution like what the USFL had this year, having all those games on over-the-air networks and having all those games on primetime over there, this was not supposed to be close. I've heard people say, well, the USFL is getting about the same and they're not spending the money, but they are putting more into it. They should be getting more out of it in terms of viewership than what they are with the positioning that they have. And so the fact that they don't have that is really telling. Now,
I want to note too before we go forward.
Okay.
A lot of folks were watching XFL through the ESPN Plus app. Or many individuals I knew. I just want to note that. So, also with the USFL, it seemed like their scheduling and their times and everything was established and concrete and just better. And I'll say that frankly, as an XFL fan, the scheduling for the USFL in whole, in my opinion, was better. Whether it be earlier games, in between the other games, we didn't have a 1 a.m. game with USFL. Right. So, I mean, that's another thing I want to note that, it's crazy that if you flipped this, what would happen?
Yeah. And see, that's the thing. Going into 2024, the XFL had room to do things like that. Exactly. They had room to say, hey, let's do a little extra marketing in market. Let's get some of these games on regular over-the-air TV or at the very least regular ESPN. Let's move a lot of our games over to that distribution and see what that does. The USFL really doesn't have that next gear to go to.
Yep. Henry, he said we would have an XFL game on ESPN and have cornhole. And they would finish the cornhole before getting to the XFL game. And we all remember this if we were XFL fans.
Yeah.
I think this was week 3 that this happened, week 4. It happened a couple of times, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was more than one time.
And it was different sports, if I remember, too. I think one was darts or something. I can't remember, but there was different things,
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that.
Yeah, and then you had the opposite kind of situation over with the USFL where, and okay, this is one of my little shit talking moments. So just bear with me. Okay, this is where that 2 million viewer game that Michigan and Memphis had. Now, again, granted, I give you that Michigan has a strong football tradition there, but there's nothing else in the data that would suggest that those two teams would organically and naturally have a 2 million view game. They don't sniff over 1 million any other time.
Exactly.
So something explains that. Well, what explains it is that I always joke with them and say a bunch of old people fell asleep watching the Kentucky Derby and just left the TV on.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, as you can see, I kept that data in there. I'm not going to take that out. It has nothing to do with whether or not I believe it. 2 million viewers is 2 million viewers. I'm going to keep it in there.
Yep.
But the point I was going to make with that is that, unlike the opposite of the whole cornhole thing running over into your game and people turn away because something else is on the channel. The USFL had the opposite advantage, where it's like, hey, let's take this big event, the Kentucky Derby, that a lot of people are watching, and let's stick our thing right behind that. And for that game, I mean, in terms of numbers, it worked.
I mean, most men, even boys, if we're watching something and it's following up with somewhat interesting topics, sports, news, whatever, I'm sure that we will engage. I will engage. Yeah. Same thing with women. It just depends on the subject matter. But I mean, this is it's a good way to do business, in my opinion. And it's what gets people to your product, and there's no shame in that.
Exactly. And I'm not knocking them doing.
Oh, I know. I'm just I'm being the devil's advocate here. I'm not pro either one. I'm pro for spring football success, and that's something that we've talked about numerous times.
Right. And I have to make sure that your audience understands that too. That okay, do I drink Coke more than Pepsi? Yeah, but will I drink both? Sure.
Yep.
I mean, the USFL was already gone by the time I was really watching football. I was alive when it was around, but I didn't know anything about it. I remember the XFL from when I was, teenager or something like that. But as a teacher, I've had plenty of students I had a student named Chris. Chris was failing every single class except welding. And it's like, dude, go do that.
Make your money, dog. Yeah.
There are some of these guys playing in these spring leagues where it's like, yo, this is the thing that I know how to do. And for these leagues to exist and to be giving these guys an opportunity to do that, that's what matters. I mean, forget what my preference is. I want to see these guys be able to do something to have a decent life. Like I said, I like the XFL style better. I do because of the fan engagement. But at the end of the day, it's about those guys.
Agreed. Yeah, Kenneth said, and yet the XFL still competed against the USFL quite well. Hashtag product value, hashtag brand power. And that's the truth. And if we wouldn't have been scorned by the 2020, COVID season, there's no telling where we'd be sitting in terms of XFL. It'd be a whole different world right now.
I think it definitely would be. I don't think we would be, I know we wouldn't be having this discussion now had they finished that season out. With the ratings that they got, with the television distribution that they got. I mean, you got to remember, those games were all on network television, over-the-air television, and they were easily getting over 1 million views.
It was hot.
Yeah, it was hot.
Yeah, people loved it, man. Let me run through a couple more comments before we move on. XFL Mike G said, would have loved to have a consistent schedule like the USFL. And I agree wholeheartely, because when I just started planning the season, even December, I still didn't get to plan anything until January. So I'm right there.
Yeah.
So Gregory said, I hear what this gentleman is saying, but the USFL season started later. I'm sure there was some spring football fatigue involved. And hey, I'm agreeable with that wholeheartedly. There is such thing as too much. But I mean, as spring football fans, we know what we're in for, and we all knew what was coming this last year in terms of spring football.
Right. I think that one of the things that I bring up about spring football, and I kind of talk about it later on in the article, is that we can't look at spring football with any of the assumptions that we might take into the NFL.
Exactly.
The NFL can afford to the NFL can have a 3-2 snooze fest and be fine. Do you see what I mean?
Yep.
They can have a game that they can have the two sorriest teams play, and it's not going to affect the brand. These spring leagues can't afford that. They can't have bad games. They can't have bad quarterbacks. They can't have receivers dropping the ball. So little things that other types of football leagues don't worry about, this league is going to have to worry about it. So, for instance, like you talked about USFL, it's hotter in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
And who in the South wants to go sit outside and watch a team that they may not have an attachment to, watching players that they've never heard of? So we've got to be realistic about that. That spring football has to get over that hump first, in order to before they can make other kinds of assumptions and before they can take other risks.
Yeah. I attest with that and agree. I don't even want to sit outside for a minor league baseball game, in April, May. So I can't imagine.
Right.
You got to really love it to do it, and that's
You do.
okay. Some people do, but it's
Right,
getting
but-
those people out there and making them find that love is the first
Right.
part of the whole kicker.
Right, and I think that's and not to get off topic and talk about the hubs. I think that's one of the reasons why the hub teams, as you can see throughout all of the data, that's why they're lagging, because you have to overcompensate. If you're a guy that's 5'2", you got to do some things that a guy that's 6'2" doesn't have to do to get attention. And these hub teams, they're not doing the direct engagement that the teams that are in markets are doing. When you look at the data, Las Vegas and Orlando, these are two of the weakest XFL teams. They not only in terms of record, but in terms of attendance, they still outperform those hub teams.
Understood. All right, let's move forward. Next piece of the data you'd like to present, just point me towards that direction.
Let's go down to, I want to say something about the primetime game. So scroll down just a little bit. I want to point out, if you look at the bottom box there, I want you to notice where the advantage probably comes in for a lot of the USFL teams. Fox did an excellent job of making sure that they all had primetime over-the-air games. And if you compare that, look at the XFL side. You had 6 of their teams that never had primetime over-the-air games. That's going to make a big difference.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, the only game that the XFL had that was primetime and over-the-air was a championship game.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it. So XFL teams lost a lot of points in my metrics because they didn't compete in that dimension. Now, if you look right across from that, you had 4 USFL teams that didn't have the opposite problem, which is they didn't have primetime games that were on the bad channels.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and they're all last there, huh?
Right.
And that's surprising with New Orleans as well. I thought they were a more popular market than that.
Yeah. Well, it kind of doesn't necessarily surprise me. I mean, it's not a it's not a small town, but
yeah,
they're loyal. Some people are. Let me tell you something. Some people, if they eat pizza, it's only going to be Pizza Hut. If it's not Pizza Hut, they're not.
Hey, that's me most of the time. I ain't gonna lie.
And some of these sports fans, some of these sports towns, they're kind of one-trick ponies. Like, for instance, Oklahoma, they love OU, but do we know that if we put a pro team there, they'd like that just as much? We would assume that they would, but we don't know. I mean, New Orleans loves the Saints, but it's not obvious that football love just naturally rolls over to the Breakers. I kind of thought that too. I thought that the Breakers would be a little more popular, but they're on that third and fourth tier of the league quite often.
Yeah, and that I'm curious if they've had some rumbles about the Shrine. I'm curious if getting them in a home place is going to make a difference. And according to your data, it does make somewhat of a difference to be in your home city, and that makes sense. Your fans have a personal connection to that team, to that sport, whatever.
Exactly. And that's why I say Michigan, my prediction is that I think Michigan's going to overtake Birmingham as the center of USFL, the USFL, fandom. Just in terms of how they showed out for that team. And if I were a Birmingham Stallions fan, a couple of teams would scare me. They're not necessarily performing well now, but there might be some data that says that they could in the future. And that is New Jersey. They're not in their market right now. But if you look at TikTok, guess who's number 1 in terms of followers on TikTok? The damn Generals.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how much of these, is this one person that really takes it and runs with it on the socials, or is it a committee approach and one just happens to get lucky?
Right.
I would be very interested in that, to be honest with you. I know like XFL has a team that does that, but yeah, I mean, I'm just very, very curious on that. But yeah, man.
Yeah. So just imagine what would the Generals be if they were in market. I mean, that area, just that area, you want to be in the sort of that New York, New Jersey area if you're going to do anything sports related. That's a massive viewership market. So maybe rent, stadium rentals are more there. Maybe it's harder to find things that are affordable in that area. But if you ask me, I probably would have tried to put a hub there or somewhere in the area, where, because I mean, think about it. If you hub the Stars and the Generals together somewhere, either in the Philadelphia area or somewhere in New Jersey, I mean, you can get those people out. And I think that once you get those big markets out, I think that if I were a smaller market like Birmingham, I would probably worry about that, because if you notice, Birmingham, they do better than bigger cities that are not playing in market. But every city that's bigger than Birmingham that was playing in that market beat Birmingham in terms of yeah.
Now when going forward, let's try to say some of the numbers that matter, just for the listeners that listen and don't watch. I just want to note that, because they're probably confused as hell right now. But yeah, I mean, I just have the screen open and I'm running through some stuff. I'd say about 40% of our listeners are just listeners. They're not video watchers. So just want to note that. But guys, I'll have a link to his stuff in the show notes. It'll be just click and go, super easy. It's Assignments to Go is the website URL, and I'll post the exact link in those notes. All right. So I'll tell you what, I mean, if you're okay with it, I'll post this link out in the chat, and if people want to keep up with it as we're talking,
please do. And that's my bad. I forgot about the people who were just
You're
listening.
Good. That's my job as the host. I'm getting too excited with this research, dude, hearing you talk about it. I will note as well, I mean, this site, we've got some things coming for our own news site, guys at home. If you're listening, there are some developments on the way with the podcast and the evolution of the show and then the news and everything. So keep your head up and eyes open. We should have something within the next week about, a resource where you can find stuff like this. So just keep all your eyes open, your ears alert, and just pay attention, because things are about to go down.
Okay. So let's see. So you want to talk some numbers? If you want to,
just go ahead like you're doing, and just
stop right there. Stop right there. I want to tell everybody what that is, because they just see a bunch of dashes and dots and colors and all that kind of stuff.
It's like Morse code.
Right. Okay. So again, this is me putting my teacher cap on. I wanted to kind of give sort of a visual illustration, okay, which again, another thing that doesn't help the people that are listening. But
pause real quick. We had a question real quick before we move forward. The OTA was over the air, correct?
Yes.
And then the BWC, what was that again?
That stands for Bad Weather Channel, which means it's your bottom tier cable. It's not regular ESPN. It's any of those other channels like FX, USA, ESPN2, FS1, any of those smaller distribution channels.
Okay, just had a question on that, so go ahead and go back forward. I just wanted to note that, while people were paying attention.
Okay, so in that chart there, that people, maybe people who are watching or people who open the article later on, what you'll see is that basically I took each game and I put it in the tier of the hundreds of thousands that it fell in, and so it's color coded, right? So the over the air games are going to be green.
Okay.
The red games are going to be the bad weather channels. The black is regular ESPN, which only the XFL had those. And then the gold ones are prime time and over the air. Okay?
Understood.
Now, I want you to, so sometimes when you look at the chart, you kind of see where stuff clusters together. So if you notice, the USFL has a bunch of games that cluster in the 700,000s.
Yep.
So they've got about 12 games that cluster there. 12 of their total, the 43 games were in the 700,000 range. And then you have about 10 that are in the 200,000 range. So what you see with the USFL is that you have bigger swings there. They either did decently in the 700,000s or they did poorly in the 200,000s. Now you compare that to the other side, you see the XFL, the games are a little more evenly distributed up the spectrum.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty good though, right there at the top.
Yeah.
Good illustrations.
Right. So, for instance, the XFL has 6 games that hit 1 million. You see that the USFL had 1 game in the million range, and they had the 2 million game. But overall, you see in terms of total numbers over 1 million, that league goes to the XFL. However, the USFL advantage comes back, and if you look at games between that 700 to 900,000 range, you see that the USFL has more games in that range than the XFL did. And that, again, you can see on the screen that that's distribution. You can see exactly what that is.
Yep.
That's 12, 13 games that are over the air versus in that same range, the XFL only has 3 games over the air in that same range. Another thing that you notice from this particular chart is that it looks like the XFL has a higher ceiling on those bad weather channels. Even though they're not the best positioning, they have a higher ceiling on those channels. So they're able to get ratings up into the 600,000 viewers on those bad channels, which is higher than what the USFL could get. But interestingly enough, the USFL has a lower floor on over the air. So their lower over the air ratings are about 500,000.
Oh, wow. Yeah. This is pretty self-explanatory, so I really don't have much questions. Guys at home, you got any kind of questions or comments to the table?
Yeah. And then just while you're waiting on that, like I said, you can see from the illustration there that ESPN was not a guarantor of anything. Of course, I mean, I'm not saying you don't want to be on it, but I mean, it's all up and down there. It says high as 1 million, low as 200,000. So it could be anywhere in there.
I mean, you know, as well as I do, and this isn't my opinion. This is what I've garnered from the news and ratings. Is ESPN's kind of fallen off compared to what it was years ago. It's not the same station, not the same content.
Yeah. And then, of course,
that's not my opinion, like I said.
Right. And, you know, to add some context, you know, both of these leagues were competing against other things. You know,
yeah.
It wasn't, they were not just competing against each other. You know, so for instance, during the XFL season, I mean, you had, you know, NHL, you know, games and playoffs.
March Madness.
Yeah. The USFL. That's why some people say, "Oh, well, you gotta adopt a later schedule because you got to get away from March Madness." Well, hell, you're still gonna run into the NBA playoffs.
Yeah, it don't matter what you do.
It doesn't matter what you do. You're gonna run into something that you're competing against. So some of these games that are low, that have a low rating, is something else was on.
Understood. And that's
and if something else is on and you're on a bad channel, I mean, you can pretty much hang it up.
It's surprising to me because the over-the-air channels, I mean, I personally, I'm not like a big cable guy, but I even use those for some sports and events, and then just to turn on to pass the time sometimes. You know, the digital antenna is an awesome thing. So all this data has really surprised me in the fact that, I mean, those numbers should be a lot better with that being said.
Yeah, they should be. Yeah. Now, the good thing about it is that when you look at from the team perspective, when you look at their viewership averages on over the air, the good thing about it is that the individual teams themselves don't dip down below 700,000 on over the air. So there may be some games here and there that dip, but in terms of overall over the air averages for the teams, they do pretty well when they're on over the air. And so I think that if the decision to move these games, which is what we heard, they're going to move them over to on the air. I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree. And some people don't like that, but I think in terms of numbers, it's definitely a help.
Yeah, I don't think you have a choice with that because I think we can kind of, if you want, I mean, we don't have to stay on it, but I kind of wanted to mention something about the NCAA comparisons at the bottom because it kind of talks a little bit about that when you talk about what's a good rating or what's a good attendance, well, sometimes it helps to compare that to other things that we're a little bit more familiar with. Because when you say, well, we don't want it to be over the air, well, I mean, I don't know what kind of result you're trying to get out of these games. I mean, that's the best positioning. Over the air is best. Primetime over the air is best. So if you scroll down just a little bit, I want to just kind of give everybody some context on how you can think about some of the viewership.
What was this right here?
Right there. And I'm going to pull it up here just so I can talk about the numbers.
No problem. You're good.
Okay, so the Renegades averaged about, let's say, 69,000 viewers. Now, if this were an NCAA team, that would be around what Kansas and Army would get for a season average. Okay. So that's kind of on the top tier of the XFL. On the bottom tier, you have Seattle that averages about 518,000. That's somewhere around Wake Forest, UCF, Arizona. Now, I had somebody say, well, I mean, what's the point of comparing this to college? They're not. It's not a college league. Well, obviously, it's not a college league, but it's a similar. You're selling a similar product, and what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to gauge about how popular, about how big a reach do these teams have. So, for instance, if you're a Seattle Dragons fan, your team is about on TV, and your team is about as popular as UCF or Arizona or Wake Forest. And I think that measuring these teams against college I think it's elucidating, or something that can shed a lot of information, because college, unlike the NFL, every team in the NFL is top tier, right? College, you have a wide spectrum of teams. You have the team that you only know about it because you got stranded somewhere and some guy that's a janitor at the college came and helped you change your tire. And then you got your blue chip, teams like Alabama, Notre Dame, Texas, or whatever. So we can measure the growth of the popularity of the spring league by knowing what teams that they're roughly the equivalent of, or what games they're roughly the equivalent of. So when you know that, for instance, Michigan, their season average, they're about as popular as West Virginia, Kansas, you get some kind of an idea. And I did that for attendance too, by the way.
Gotcha. So is this what, do I need to scroll some more? You got some more?
Go further up. You'll see that.
Okay, right here.
For instance, let me scroll up while I'm talking. St. Louis, they average about 35,000 attendees. That's around what Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt and Oregon State, Cincinnati, that's about what they drew for their 2022 averages. So those are some pretty decent names. I mean, even if you don't watch college football, you may have heard of those teams before.
No doubt.
And so that's one of the things that when I think about popularity, I think, what description would you use to explain the popularity? Popularity goes from, I don't watch football, but I've heard of that team, all the way over to, I watch football every day and I've never heard of that team. So where on that spectrum are we in terms of spring league? We want to be, what we want to do, I mean, it's new, but we want to eventually get to the point to where a person that doesn't watch spring league still has heard of the San Antonio Brahmas. They've still heard of the Michigan Panthers. They've still heard of the Birmingham Stallions or the DC Defenders. That's where we want to get. So you can see in terms of popularity, St. Louis is pretty much kind of already there. They're in that territory where you may not. So, for instance, let's take Cincinnati and Boise State. You may not watch those teams, but you probably have heard of them. That's
Definitely
something. That's saying something. San Antonio and DC, you're getting a little more obscure. You're talking about like New Mexico State, a lot of Conference USA teams. I mean, not unknown, but less known. And then the bottom half, Seattle, Arlington, Houston. Now you're talking about schools like Charlotte, Kent State, Ball State, Coastal Carolina. I've heard of those teams because I listen to sports all the time. I don't think a casual fan's ever heard of those teams. And then lastly, Orlando and Vegas. I mean, you're talking about West Texas A&M in the Lone Star Conference. I didn't even know there was a Lone Star Conference.
And Arkansas Tech.
Yeah, Arkansas Tech, the things like that.
Was Arkansas Tech, is that in Russellville? Is that correct? I think it's Russellville, Arkansas.
Yeah, I want to say so.
It's the original, I think it's at Whataburger is there. If y'all ever make it that way to Russellville, check it out. It is spectacular. I had to plug that real quick. I'm sorry.
Wait a minute. You said the original Whataburger. That's Whataburger's not from Texas. Are you telling me that?
It was an off franchise. I don't know the exact details, and I've only had
if
friends.
You were going to tell me that Whataburger was not from Texas.
It doesn't even look like a Whataburger. You see it, man. It looks like a mom and pop.
You need to go ahead and insult me at the beginning of the podcast so I can go ahead and get off.
I'll tell you what. I will Google it after we get done tonight, and I will send you some details. Because honestly, I'm curious now, but I'm pretty sure it's a Whataburger. But you can't tell.
I don't know, man.
They don't have the franchise tag. They don't have any of the. I'll have to send it to you, man. Let you see it, but.
I know they're not owned by a Texas company anymore.
No.
I thought they started in Texas.
Arkansas people love this place, and that's how I know it. It's just from buddies taking me over the years. But yeah, in terms of the research, this is great stuff. Whether it be the actual attendance or the viewing numbers here, I mean, this will give you an idea of the relation of what each team means to, I guess, a community as a whole, as well as the popularity.
Because listen, the growth of the league, and this is why I kind of always pause diehard football fans from saying, "Hey, man, I don't care what they do. I just want football." You have to have a faction of the fandom that feels that way, right?
Exactly.
Anytime you're selling something, you need diehard people that are just like, if you're selling it, I'll buy it from you. But the question is, have we already maxed those people out in spring football? Do we already have the people who will watch spring football no matter what configuration it's in? What if the growth of spring football is mainly casual fans? People who, they'll watch football if there's somebody on the team that they've heard of, or if there's a story behind the game, or if they have a connection to the team or something like that. But if, or if they're bored or something like that. But what if that's the faction that we have to hit up in order to grow this? Those people, they could be picky. I'm just like, they can be as picky as me with enchiladas. If enchiladas have onions in them, I'm not eating them. There are some people with football that's just like, if they don't want to see a 9-7 defensive game, they're not watching that. Yeah. And so, or not to beat a dead horse, but I had a cousin who played for the Patriots back in the 90s, and he always says, "I hate when football season's over." And so I asked him a couple of weeks ago, I said, "So if you love football so much, how come you don't watch the spring leagues?" I was like, "That's good football. I enjoy it." I was like, "How come you don't watch that?" He's like, "Because I've never heard of any of those guys. I don't know who these teams are." You know what I mean? So that's the person that you have to win over. And he just straight up said it. He's like, if not knowing the guy playing on the team and not knowing the team is already a turnoff, I'm damn sure not watching them play in front of 50 people.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. And like I said, the data that I put on the document shows you that there are some instances where a hub team will jump up, somewhere, but for the most part, they're not yet an asset. I have an idea of what we can do with them, but we don't have to get into that. But
yeah, we can talk about it more. No worries. No, you're fine. We can keep on moving. It's all good. I just wanted to pick this apart a little bit just because it's fantastic, man. And it really is. The important thing to remember is, when you look at these college teams, they have a history. They have a following that's lasted a long time. Some of them longer than others. But, I mean, these are people that really love their teams. And if you can match these numbers like this, it really does speak volumes and the long-term success, as long as you can sustain that,
As long as you can sustain it. Yeah. And I think that's meaningful. I know when I tweeted it, there's a guy that was like, why is this important? He was like, so what are you trying to say? I think he thought I was making a dig at one of his teams. And I was like, no, I'm not. This is not an insult to say that your team has about the popularity of, Miami or Wake Forest. That's not a dig on your team. It's giving you some sort of an idea of where you are. Now you know where you want to go up from. So, for instance, when I say that the majority, in terms of attendance, the majority of teams are somewhere around Conference USA or the MAC or something like that. Okay, well, at least you know where you are now. Yep. You can contextualize that, and so you can say, okay, well, we're at Conference USA now. We want to get up to what's the next level up? Is it Big 12? Is it, Pac-12? If that's the next level up, let's shoot for that.
Yeah. I mean, speaking frankly, I mean, I know that if we would have had a lot more community engagement in these XFL cities, I don't know about USFL because I didn't cover them,
Mhm.
You would see more on these numbers, no doubt. If the schedule was laid out, 2 or 3 months ahead of time with season tickets available, you would see more people. You would see more fan numbers. You would see more viewing engagement. So, I mean, it's all relevant and necessary to.
I think that the USFL season proved that.
Yeah.
That they did all of the non-direct engagement things that you can do. They're on social media. They had a Super Bowl commercial. They're on over there. They've done all of the sort of the distant promoting that you can do to get popularity out there. They did everything except, and of course, and I'm talking about in the hub situation. They did everything except let the players be there so people can actually touch them, and see them and have that experience. Because when you look at the XFL games and you see all of those people dressed up in costumes and having a good time, I mean, it looks like a party. And it's a part of that, just watching that. I mean, there's a part of the brain, the mirror neuron center, where when you see a person smiling, your automatic reaction is to want to smile back at them. Or when you are in a room, why do you think comedies are funnier when you're sitting in a crowd?
It's that energy, baby. It's that, you can feel it.
And that's why, Houston Roughnecks fans are about ready to burn the city down if they lose their team. They're not doing that just because they watch a few guys in the empty stadium.
Yeah, no doubt on that. And speaking of that, Predator couple chimed in earlier and they said they have 816 signatures now. So congrats to them on their hard work. And when we first started, man, that thing started with like 50 or 60 and I saw it at 90. Then, it just kept growing from there. But that's awesome, guys. Appreciate your work. All the super fans that were involved with that.
Let me give you a stat about interesting stat to Predator couple. The Houston Roughnecks, if you just took their performance on the bad channels, okay, the channels where it's hard to get a good rating, and I'm gonna see if I can pull it up here. The Houston Roughnecks average just on those channels is higher than the Gamblers' total average, even if you include the Gamblers' games on over the air and prime time and things like that. The Roughneck averages on those bad channels is still higher.
All the way around on any of these categories, correct?
Yeah, any of them. Yeah. I mean, we can run through it. Let's see. The Roughnecks they averaged 542,000 just on the bad channels. Okay. And then the Gamblers total, their raw viewer average is 525,900. All right. So just to kind of give you, try to give you an idea of, let's just say Matt and I are in class, right? And I said, me and Matt are going to compare our grades in the class. I'm just going to average my bad grades for the class, but I'm going to average all of Matt's grades, even his good grades. And my average is still higher than his.
I'm failing, man.
Right. It's like, how bad are you failing this class?
Yeah, it's like I can see you tried to make this as fair as possible. Yeah. And even when you went and gave, 3 handicaps, you still wind up with a similar result.
Yeah, you do. Yep.
Understood. In terms, go ahead.
There's a graph that I have, and they may just have to pull it up directly where I put the search.
Is it on your Twitter?
No, it's on my Twitter too.
Okay, I'm on your Twitter right now, so if you have it on here, I can pull it up. Just tell me what you look for.
Okay. You can pull up where the search trend for the Gamblers and the Roughnecks are compared. And you see this. So basically the way Google Trends works is that if you put 2 things in there to compare, the biggest spike that you see is going to be the most popular that one of the, so let's just say with Houston and the Roughnecks and the Gamblers. You'll see on the graph that the Roughnecks are the blue line and then the Gamblers are the red line. the top of that crest.
Hold on, let's find this. Let's find this before. I don't want to get people confused. Let's find it.
It was on the article.
It's on the.
Keep going.
Down or up?
Keep going down.
Yeah, it's just dead end right here.
It's not letting you go past that.
No, it's just dead end right there. Oh, I'm sorry. I got the wrong page pulled up. Hold on, dude.
Okay.
That's my bad. I was looking at the wrong thing. All right, I'm going down.
And if you can't find it, I mean, it's on the article too, but keep going.
Right
okay, that might be it.
Search trend comparison for the Roughnecks and USFL
there you
gamblers.
Go. Okay. There you go. Okay, do you see how much bigger that spike is for the Roughnecks than the gamblers?
Yep. The blue spike is the Roughnecks.
Yeah. Now, whenever I see a spike like that at the beginning of the season, and what you'll notice is that because sports are seasonal, they all kind of have that spike at the beginning because everybody's excited about the new season. So they're searching all kinds of things, when's the game, where, who are the players and all that kind of stuff. I call that an anticipatory spike. All right. That rates the overall enthusiasm for the coming of the season of that particular team. So if you look at the gamblers, you see that they have a spike at the beginning of their season too, but compare the size difference between the Roughnecks and the gamblers.
You're looking at 75 just off there, correct?
Right. Yeah. And so what that means is so you see that the Roughnecks are up at the top of the graph, which is at 100. Okay. That top spike. And then you look at the top spike for the gamblers, it goes up to 25. What that means on Google Trend is that the gamblers are a quarter of the popularity of the Roughnecks in terms of their searches.
And what was the dates? Did you do full?
That was for the past 12 months.
Understood.
And I didn't mention that at first. When I was looking at the social media, when I looked at how the totals averaged out, I said, well, maybe this is just a situation where the older the team, the more the followers. Because obviously you have the legacy XFL teams that are still in the league, right? They were here back in 2020. You've got your USFL teams that played their first season in 2022. And then you've got your new teams, from both leagues that started this year. And I said, well, maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's just that you have been around longer. You've just been around longer to accumulate followers. And so that's where what we call multivariate assessment helps, which is where you don't just measure things using one tool. You measure it using a bunch of different tools and see if they all go in the same direction.
See what the correlation is.
Right. See what the correlation is. So when I see that the Roughnecks have a higher social media following than the gamblers, I can't just automatically assume that just automatically means they're more popular. When I look at this search, though, I did that search for this year, current year, and you see that same relationship still exists. So this is not a situation where the Roughnecks and the gamblers are secretly equal as popular, but nothing is showing it. No, every metric that's available, if you look at viewership, Roughnecks beat them. If you look at social media, Roughnecks beat them. If you look at searches, Roughnecks beat them. The only spot where the gamblers do better is if you isolate and you just look at prime time. The gamblers beat them, and that's because of distribution. The gamblers had all their primetime games on over the air. The Roughnecks had all their primetime games on the bad channels. So obviously they should have beaten them in that situation.
Agreed. And great data here. And your points make sense, and they're all driven by this. This isn't you just saying la-di-da-da-da, this is what I think. This is like legitimate as it comes. And if people are going to argue this because they're just some ignorant people out there. But I mean, this isn't an argument for us. We were just talking about this data. We were just discussing this conversation. This isn't pro anything. I'm just noting this again.
And let me just give a shout out to those people, though, to the people who are diehard XFL homers, diehard USFL homers, because it's tempting for us to say that these are people that, they're just being homers. And to some degree, that's true, because some people you can show them, in their face, that something's not working. They're just like, nope, that's still what I want to do. But to a degree, we're looking at the result of successful branding. That's the purpose of branding. You want to take a general demand in the market and create a bias for your particular product. You don't want people to be just as likely to go buy a shirt from the guy across the street as to buy it from you. You want the people to say, well, if you're closed today and you're not selling shirts, I'm just not going to buy one today.
Exactly.
That's what you want. And we want spring football to have that sort of a bias where people are like, no, I'm just watching this.
Well, I think that point was true, but now that we're talking about the merger, that definitely shifts that thinking. And I mean, because if they combine and we act some teams on either end, you're going to really have some people that just quit or just become a full-time hater, 100%.
Yeah. And I'm kind of curious about that, to be quite honest with you, that if we end up playing separate seasons this year, because I mean, the closer we get to when something's supposed to start, the harder it is to make adjustments. I mean,
agreed.
These stadiums, you can't just show up at the stadium and be like, okay, no, we're not going to play in February. Can we come in? That's not how stadiums work. And that's not how TV contracts. I mean, that's not how, television slots work. You can't just say, okay, we can't be on the 7. Can you put us on at 8? There are a bunch of things that are planned around that. So the closer we get to the season, we might end up having to play these seasons out. Well, we don't know what the negotiation would be after that happens. Because this whole upcoming season could change the entire landscape and the assumptions of where the strong and the weak spots are. What if the attendance in Orlando shoots up? Which, I mean, as hot as it is down there, I mean, it's ass hot. So, I mean, I don't. It's not a mystery to me why they struggle with attendance. But let's just say
you sit everybody in the sun too. That doesn't go over too well,
Yeah. But I think that if the Guardians are better this year too, I mean, because that's some of it too. If they're better, you might have some people that are willing to come out and sit through that. But if that's just for argument's sake, say that the Guardians get their attendance up to somewhere around what the Renegades have, which is somewhere in the 14,000s. Okay, the Guardians were around 8,000. Let's see if they can at least get it up to 14,000 or something like that. I happen to know that the city of Orlando really, really wants the Guardians there. They're really willing to work with them. So do you give up that? Do you give up that relationship? And you can see a noticeable growth in people coming out to support the team. What if or let's go opposite. Let's just say they take a team to a market. And I don't want to look like I'm picking on USFL people. Let's pick on Vegas. Let's say they put Vegas in a different city, and they're like, well, let's put it in, I don't know, Henderson, Nevada, and let's see how it does there. And let's just say it doesn't do well. Now you would have had 2 consecutive years of the Vipers struggling. And so if that conversation comes up again on who do we ask, it might start to make sense to put them on pause,
Yeah, save the money, because obviously it's not getting a return. That's the thing for me. I don't know, man. That's a rough one as well. Same thing with Houston, because we don't, even if the season is coming next year, we don't know where we're playing. We can guess and we can say, but in the end, we do not know the facts of what's happening. So that's another tough one, in my opinion, I don't know. Now, these, in terms of these numbers, what's the most popular team in terms of the numbers? Not your opinion, just the data.
Okay, well, so that's what I'm saying. You have to, if you want to say everything taken together, weighted together, then the most popular team, the strongest team, I'll say this, because when you're talking about popularity, there's so many different dimensions to measure that.
Well, when I say popularity, I mean who's got the best numbers? The
DC.
Okay, that's DC, what I mean.
Numbers. DC, and then Arlington, Birmingham, and St. Louis. Like I said, on social media, your legacy XFL teams, I mean, like your DC, Arlington, St. Louis, Houston Roughnecks, Seattle, I mean, they're pretty much top of the pack everywhere. There's one spot where New Jersey jumps up on TikTok and is the most popular, but that's kind of an outlier for them. But my power rankings basically show you if you aggregate everything together so that everything has a say, but nothing has too much of a say, you pretty much see where the rankings where they come out. I think some of the Brahma fans are probably going to be mad at me because I have the Brahmas at 9. Yeah, I know XFL Mike. You already know he threw his cup at the computer, at the TV. So, but I mean, think about it. You had 4 teams in the XFL that made the playoffs. Ahead of San Antonio. So it shouldn't really. They would have been 5th just in the XFL if you just look at that particular thing. But some of that, where you have teams like San Antonio, Las Vegas, and Orlando, some of that, I want to say, really is just because they're new teams and their social media really is kind of weak, to be
Brahma Babe said, I can see 9, buddy. No harm. LOL.
Okay, there you go. There you go. So, for instance, San Antonio, they've got about 16,400 followers on Twitter. They're doing pretty well on Facebook in terms of how they compare overall. I mean, they're 6th, but their numbers are still kind of low, particularly for an XFL team, because on Facebook they've got 12,000 followers, but the next team up, which is DC, they've got 34,000. So that's a pretty big difference. However, on IG, they do pretty well. They got about 57,000.
Oh, wow.
There. Yeah. XFL does really well on Instagram. I don't. That's one of the things that I kind of wanted to try to dive deeper into is what makes certain platforms more popular for certain teams. Like when you look, I said before that I thought that maybe this was just an age thing, that the older the team, the better the following. But when you go to IG, I mean, even these young teams, San Antonio, Vegas, Orlando, I mean, they're doing better than all the USFL teams. And I'm curious as to what explains that. Is it that I do know that the USFL has a comparatively older following?
That would make sense.
It could just be that the older followers are just not as likely to use Instagram. But then what explains the fact that the Generals are number 1 on TikTok?
Yeah, that's a head scratcher, no doubt.
Yeah.
In terms of the XFL, I mean, I feel like I said, they had much more of a team approach to their social media, and that correlation you can see in these numbers, in my opinion. Yeah. You can see, it's a team effort, and I'm wondering if USFL is just individual. If there's a couple guys here, a couple girls there, and they do what they can to keep up.
And that would make sense because I happen to know that Fox is not as, especially when it comes to the social media stuff, they're not as fan friendly as the XFL has tended to be. You can get copyright.
Explain that, please. Explain that for the people at home.
So, for instance, you do not have to be an XFL. Let me put it this way: there are accounts, for instance, on YouTube where they can put up XFL highlights, and that's what they do every week. They will put up XFL highlights, and it was fine. The USFL will copyright strike you for putting their highlights up.
Yep.
So when you have that kind of relationship, over social media with your fans, where there's a limit to what they can share, I think some of this is what you would end up with.
Yeah, it's almost censorship on your own accord,
Right.
Unfortunately. I mean, just from my vision, and it's hard to get the USFL numbers, the data, injury reports, anything. XFL, once you get those credentials and you get hooked up with your contact, you have full throttle information that they release publicly. It's for your viewing pleasure.
Right.
USFL does not feel similar, just as a media coverage basis.
I dealt with that with trying to come up with these power rankings, because what do? I gave all the teams a ranking for attendance. And of course, the hub teams don't get any points for that because they don't, typically have any fans there. But I know for a fact that Birmingham and Michigan and Memphis, I know they have fans there.
Yep.
But they won't give me the number, so I couldn't really give them an accurate amount of points in the comparison. What I basically did was, just as a gesture of friendliness, I said, okay, nobody was St. Louis. Okay, because trust me, if they were St. Louis, we'd have those numbers.
Exactly.
But I'm not going to put you down there with Vegas either. I'm not going to say you're that bad. So I'm going to assume that you were somewhere around what the middle of the XFL was and give you the same points that I would have given them. But I mean, how hard would it have been just give me those numbers? I mean, who knows? Maybe a USFL team slides up a little bit if I have actual numbers. For instance, Michigan. Does Michigan go up a little more if I actually have numbers that I can put with that?
Understood.
Now, the way I weighted the rankings, there would not have been an astronomical change though. I do know what point differential there would have been, if they had done better than the points I gave them, and it wouldn't have really adjusted anything too much.
Mike G said, I told you just go back and watch the games and count them. Shouldn't take long. Burner, Mike G, burner. I mean, the data would be awesome. And just the transparency knows that, hey, it's all good. We don't mind. To me, it seems like you have something to hide whenever you're not being transparent with your numbers. And that's with anything you're doing, whether it's U.S. government or football. It's the same stuff,
Right. Yeah, and I think what you were talking about with the social media, just to point out another thing, if you want to scroll down just a little bit, the league's main pages, you also see a big difference there. Go down a little bit more.
Right here?
Keep going. One more. Okay, right there. Now, when it says league social media comparison, that's the main page for the league.
Understood.
On those platforms. Okay. Look down at Instagram. Look at the comparison there.
Wow.
700,000 to 17,000.
Woo wee. My Lord. That's a big difference, my friend.
Yeah. YouTube subscriptions, 83,000 versus 26,000. See, the USFL would probably benefit from having a more relaxed attitude toward allowing people to share their highlights. You see what I mean? Because how many people, I can already tell you that just from the XFL page itself, there are 83,600 people that go there to see highlights, to see other kinds of information. But you've got other people out there that probably get watched every bit as much that are sharing those highlights. I mean, because I would know, because there was one guy's channel that I would always watch because he would have the highlights up real quick. And his views were getting about as much as the XFL main page. So again, that's extra distribution, and we didn't even calculate that in this. Yep. How many extra people that are not officially part of the league are distributing content for these leagues? Agreed. And when you're behind in your main accounts and you don't let anybody else do any distribution for you, how are you going to compete with a league that is ahead of you in every platform, and they allow other people to share things too? I don't know how you're going to keep up with that. I look at things like the fact that, you ever notice that when an NFL player is struggling, they're like, oh, well, he's going to be in the XFL next year. That statement that the XFL is kind of gaining traction in what we call common parlance, right? It's a statement that people just, they don't have to do research to make it. It's just something that people think to say. Nobody is saying, oh, well, maybe he'll be in the USFL. That lets you know that lets you know what a brand recognition is and which brand is taking root, in people's discussions.
Interesting. Now, let me go back. I'm going to go back and look.
By the way, the only one that's close is TikTok on there. TikTok, the USFL is competing pretty good on there.
Yeah, and it was funny is when you posted this on Twitter, I mean, we had a rando account comment the TikTok followers. So in that
I know, right? Like, where did that come from?
Somebody was plugged in, or somebody had been working, or somebody's proud of those numbers, apparently.
Right.
Because, we always got those fake burner accounts on Twitter that like to strike. They can't have an informed conversation. They just make a out-of-place comment or insult you and then run away and then hop onto another burner account and let's do it again. It's a very common thing on there. But, yeah, man. Let me roll some questions now. Gregory, he's got some questions, so we're gonna get to it. Okay. He said, given all that you were saying, please explain, and we've talked about this some already, DeMarcus. Please explain why the XFL model has led them to seek a merger with the USFL. The USFL is trying to survive long enough to attract private ownership for each team.
Okay, but that's not a bad question though. Yeah, we've talked about it, but just to address that, because number one, that's a common thing. People keep saying, well, XFL lost money. Why are they looking for a merger? You got to remember also the XFL was talking to the CFL even before last season started.
Exactly.
So it's not like they had the season there like, oh shit, now we're out of money now. They were talking to the CFL before this past season even started. So it could just be that, I think, what did somebody say, that he said that his wife was just that woman that if we go to the party, she's just going to chat with everybody. Maybe the XFL is just that. They're that league that's like, hey, we'll go work with you. We'll go, see what's going on with you.
Well, they did have the agreement with the IFL also, so we can't forget about that. That's another partnership that they had. That getting guys and sending them down or whatever.
Exactly. They went to the NFL and they said they went. I watched an interview with The Rock yesterday. And he's like, look, the first iteration of the XFL had an antagonistic relationship with the NFL. And he said, we went to the NFL with our hat in our hand and was just like, look, we're not trying to outdo you. We're not trying to compete with you. We want to work with you. So that could just be their style, their spirit. They want to work with people because they want this to succeed. I know this is something that The Rock takes very personal because this is an opportunity he didn't have. So, but to get to some of the details, you said, what was the rest of his question?
Please explain why the XFL model has led them to seek a merger with the USFL. And then he said the USFL is trying to survive long enough to attract private ownership for each team.
Okay, yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. Okay, I need USFL people to understand that with the hub model, an assumption is being made. Okay, so let's just say I want to move into a more expensive house, and so I start saving money. But I can only save some money, and I never make any more money. I might get into that other house, but eventually the higher bills are going to kick in. And eventually I'm going to start eating away at my savings. And if I don't make any more money, I'm going to end up in the same place as a person that didn't save money. So the USFL is trying to survive, but they are assuming that the popularity of their brand will increase while they're saving money. So the saving money that they're doing on these hubs, it only works if prices stay predictable when it comes to renting, and if the viewership and the fan engagement goes up. What if the viewership plateaus? Or what if in 2 or 3 years when they want to go and market, what if rent prices for stadiums is totally different? They don't necessarily know that when they go into these markets that they're going to be able to survive. And like I said earlier in the conversation, what the XFL is doing now by spending money, putting their teams out there, the USFL is going to do that at some point. At some point in time, they're going to have to start paying the electric bill on their own. They're going to have to start paying rent on their own. And guess what? Do we know for a fact that their engagement is enough to carry them over? USFL brothers, listen, think about this. What if the USFL only does well enough to maintain the status quo? What if you never do well enough to take half your leave out of the hubs? What if you're stuck with what you have now? Are you okay with that? Some of you guys are. Some of you guys say, hey, I don't care. It's a TV product to me. Cool. But there's a chance you guys could get stranded where you are. So I would not praise this model too much. And like I said earlier, there's a reason why when the XFL called and said, let's merge, there's a reason the USFL said, okay, let's talk. If you call your ex and say, let's get back together, and she doesn't hang up on you, evidently she's thinking about getting back together too. You know what I mean? So if she says, okay, let's have coffee,
rendezvous,
right? Evidently she's got feelings for you. So I mean, you can say what you want to say. The USF, like I said earlier, both of these business models have a problem. The XFL is going to burn through money. We know that. But the USFL is not going to make as much money as they could. I compare it to if Matt and I want to start a music career and Matt spends money to get on Yeah, he spends money to get in front of crowds to get his name out there. He's spending more money, right? What if I go stand on the street corner and sing for free? I'm saving money, right? Aren't I? Aren't I saving more money than that is? But who do you think is going to hit quicker? Who do you think people are
Exactly.
going to start talking about quicker? So, yeah, I can save my money singing on the street corner, but I mean, it'll just be me there.
Understood. And I don't think that answer is like bad or one sided. You're just telling your opinions on the business end of how this looks.
Right.
You're not saying bad USFL, good XFL. You're
No.
saying they're going to have to take the best of the two things and put them together to become an entity to build more and more.
And as a matter of fact, I guess I didn't think we would be able to fit it in here, but since we got on the topic, I think I'll go ahead and say it. I remember I was saying, I think I know what I would do with those hub teams. This is what I would do. And it may not save as much money, but I think it's a good idea. What I would do is, let's say we don't get a stadium for Vegas. So, okay, let's go ahead and put them in the hub too. Okay. But I wouldn't just put them in one city and just play them there. I might play most of their games. Let's just say they pick the hub in Arlington, right? That's the hub central for those games. Number one, I'd pick a state where I felt like people were more enthusiastic about football, so I could probably at least get some attendees. But you know what I would do? All of these different cities that we're thinking about moving spring football in, I would play at least one weekend. I would take those hub teams and I'd fly them out to that city. The CFL has what they call Touchdown Atlantic. They're thinking of expanding into, I think, Halifax. They want to take their league and extend it out east and have a team out there. Well, to build up the market out east, they have a week called Touchdown Atlantic in the CFL where everybody goes out east and they play games out there. And they let the people that live out there come to the games. And it's a whole event. And they love it. And I say, well, why not do that with these hub teams? Instead of just letting them sit there playing in the empty stadiums, they're not costing you anything, but they're not doing anything for you either. I would have those teams. I want you to imagine this. You know the Breakers, there used to be a Portland Breakers team, right? And they've been talking about, well, Portland was a rumored place for the Vipers to go. Imagine a game in Portland between the Vipers and the Breakers. Do you see what I mean? I'd send Philadelphia and Jersey out there too, and just have a weekend where spring football is out here. You know, yep. I'd shop the league around to grow the popularity of it in markets where, you know, we could do it in Omaha, where they don't have anything like this. They may come out, like, for instance, Omaha, they've got the Little League World Series, I think, that's out there. There's something else that they have out there every year. You know, this could be a thing too, the Spring Classic. Put it in, you know, some of these cities where they don't have stuff.
Agreed. And I mean, I feel what you're saying, and I think a hybrid hub model is definitely it's better than just a hub model.
Just a hub, right?
I mean, we know that because the XFL was a hybrid hub model,
right?
We don't like to think of it like that, but I mean, it truly was in the beginning. You know, as the games progressed and season went, they were traveling and practicing and doing things in different cities, but it started there in Texas.
Yeah. I don't think people are complaining about the fly out hub where it's like, okay, you don't stay in your city, but at least you go play out there.
Yeah.
Another thing I think that the USFL would benefit from doing, and maybe even the merged league. Let's talk about it from the standpoint of a merged league. A lot of the anxiety that people have is they're going to cut my team because, you know, maybe because of expenses. Well, instead of pulling these teams completely out of the market, so let's take Seattle, for instance. Everybody says, oh, Seattle's the one it's way out, kind of tucked off. It's by itself. It's expensive to fly out there. The players complain. Okay, so why don't we do this? Instead of just yanking Seattle out of that market and pissing off those fans and making them less likely to embrace the team if it ever goes back, maybe a compromise that they might be willing to accept is, okay, well, instead of playing 5 games in Seattle, let's just play 3. All right, we'll play the division games. Seattle will get all of its division games at home. They'll get their division home games in Seattle. But to save money, we're going to pull the other 2 games. At least you're engaging with the fans, you know, and you can save a little money. And maybe you can do that with a couple of teams. Maybe when you move the Generals into Jersey, maybe they don't play a whole season in market. Maybe they just play a couple of games there, but at least the fans get a shot to come out and see their team. So there's a bunch of different sense. Yeah, there are a bunch of different ways you can do it, but I think that what this data shows is just that strict hub model where the team plays in the town that really doesn't necessarily care about them. I don't think that's going to work for the USFL.
Agreed. I mean, it's not going to work for a long-term product, no matter what you do. You have to move, shift, change. I mean, you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. We know that.
Right. Like how many times will you watch Dave Chappelle tell jokes just to the phone? You know, I mean, come on.
I don't know. He's pretty funny, so I might watch him a couple times. You know,
a couple of times. You're not going to watch it like 10 times for 2 hours every weekend.
Here, Kenneth said to DeMarcus's point, that might be even more marketable because the relative season ticket package in Seattle would be cheaper, and that's it. And then most people are traveling to these games, much like Kenneth. I know he travels for games. So, I mean, that's speaking from someone in that perspective. That's not me and you talking as media. This guy's a super fan. He's coming to these games and he's telling you, hey, this could work for me. But, I think a lot of the issue with everybody is just lack of information, misinformation. We'll have one rumor drop and then we'll have 4 articles and 3 shows about, one piece of information that may or may not be relevant to the topic of choice.
Right.
It's a redundant process, and we're seeing that over and over and over. And like I told many people, like this, I've cut out November. We were doing 2 or 3 shows a week, and at this point, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to have this conversation every time. This is okay. We're talking about this data. We're discussing opinions. We're talking about things that are objective. We're not sitting here telling our opinions. And
we're not trying to tell people which teams are going to get cut, and
Yep. The Rock was in DC, so he's going to be president. This isn't shit that we're sitting here saying. We're sitting here trying to show you guys the data, the numbers, the information, so you can decide for yourself. Exactly. I mean, you can argue with people in the comments. You can argue with me, but personally, I'm not going to argue with you. This is my job is to present this info and pick apart and discuss it with someone like DeMarcus. So I wanted to note that.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, if I put my personal bias into this, I mean, if this was me putting forth what I wanted to see, I'd have every single XFL team from 1 to 8, every single USFL team from 9 to 16.
And then you pick the reasons why each of those could. Yeah, very easy. Yeah,
right.
You could find whatever information you wanted to validate your own opinion, but with this, you show that. You're gathering this for the purpose of both of these leagues and spring football alone.
Exactly. I mean, if I could have hid TikTok, I could have said, hell, I don't want to see New Jersey at the top of that. I'm just not going to put that in there. No, it is what it is.
Very relevant,
and that's why, I mean, honestly, that's probably what makes me say I do want the merger to go ahead and happen, so that I do want to keep the rivalry between the 2 sides, but I want it to be something that benefits the league instead of it being something that could potentially, because there is a scenario where we can't agree with each other. If we can't accept anything, we're just not going to have a league at all.
You're going to cannibalize each other.
Yeah, that was already happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right now, in terms of news outlets, I mean, you're either pro XFL or pro USFL, and if just because someone doesn't say that, look at their work and let that speak for what I'm saying. That's my thing, Exactly. I want to note too. I mean, we don't get paid for doing this. This is stuff me and you are doing for enjoyment, for the love, for everything spring football. I mean, this isn't this website and this link. You're not getting paid for this. This is stuff that you're doing in your own time on your own pocket. So I wanted to note that as well.
Yep. And that's one of the things that makes me love the league is that, in the NFL, there already are thousands of people that are doing this stuff already. So you just kind of consume it. But with this league, it's like if we don't get in here and break this data down and talk about it, like there was an XFL live show during the season. There's no XFL live show now. So if we're going to talk about things, it's going to be us.
Agreed.
But I like that,
Yeah. The fan-driven media is necessary. And once we have some concrete news on this merger or not merger, we're going to see a lot more of the analytics and the discussions that we really want. right now.
Right.
This is the content that's being absorbed by 95% of people.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So we've pretty much hit all the big things. I mean, I said most popular, least popular. You can view that yourself on these charts, guys. I'm not even going to question you on the least popular at this point, because I don't want to hate on any team, and I don't want it to appear that we're doing that to hate on that team, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
What's some important factors to remember in this, in your opinion, when you were building this, when you were getting ready to present it to people? What's some things that is important to remember, good or bad?
I wanted to make sure that we get a stronger league in this merger. If it's a situation where we have to, cut off a little bit, I wanted to know for myself as a consumer, as a viewer, that they're trimming off the things that needed to be trimmed off, or that they could justifiably be trimmed off, so that I can cheer for this league, with all of my heart, so to speak. So I think it's important that when we look at this data, that number one, data can change. This time next year, this stuff's going to look totally different.
For sure.
You know what I mean? There's no rule that says that any of these teams have to stay where they are. So, and if you don't like the data, this data is about you. This data is not about the money spent by the team. This is about how many of you got out and supported your team. So if you don't like your team being low, ranked low somewhere, that's telling you what you need to do. So this is a mirror. This is not a finger point at somebody else.
In terms of negative stuff, is there anything important to remember? Anything that that stuck out to you maybe when you were doing this?
When you say negative, you mean in terms of what it could mean for the teams?
Yes, or just in general numbers,
Well, I will say this in terms of the teams. When I look at the engagement, when you look at the low engagement of some of these teams, there is going to come a point where the cost benefit is going to kick in, even if they keep all 16 of these teams. If Orlando and Vegas, if their crowds don't improve, even if they keep them this year, I mean, if their engagement doesn't improve, I mean, they did okay on television, but if we're spending money to keep you in the stadium and it's not growing, there could still be a situation where they say, okay, we gotta see what we're gonna do with this. So I think that there's still some teams that are on the bubble here, and I think that that's going to be a sort of an ongoing thing to watch. Like I said, even if they take all 16 teams into the new hub, I mean, into the new league.
I understand.
I think that I'm encouraged by what I see Roughneck fans doing. I don't know what the league is looking at when they decide whether or not they're going to pick one team over the other. I do worry about, because this data shows that the Roughnecks are so much more popular than the Gamblers. If they pick the Gamblers over the Roughnecks, I mean, I just would not be surprised if, Houston ends up not having a team, because I just don't see the following. I don't see 100% of Roughneck fans just rolling over and becoming Gambler fans.
Not the ones I know.
Because they have a choice. I mean, if they wanted to watch the Gamblers as much as the Roughnecks, and if they want to follow the Gamblers as much as the Roughnecks, the stats would be more even, because they'd be following both. They're not following both, at least not the majority of the fans. And so I kind of worry about what's going to happen in Houston. I think that if you guys really want your team, like I said, get your season tickets, raise hell, and let them know that, that's your pick.
Mike G said, I see them growing attendance. And things like this will. I mean, we saw the capabilities of just starting the online stuff, the petition, and then it led to now where, you have over 800 people on this form.
Yeah. Put the Gamblers in Oklahoma City. You got all those casinos out there. That name just
Great name
out there. Yeah.
And they need something to do out that way. There's not too much.
There you go.
Yep.
It's what? It's like, 30 minutes away from OU, I think. I guess downtown OKC is about, 30 minutes away from OU. Those college students need something to do. Come on.
Yep. Agreed.
You could, yeah. So
make it
I got a whole business package put together for that, man.
Hey, you got to save that for when they call you up and hire you, man.
I know, right?
Oh, let me see if we got last thing I got for you, man. I mean, and you've talked a lot about your personal opinions, but is there any opinions you want, to really validate or tell people before we hop off there?
Well, I can't necessarily say. I mean, not that I haven't talked about already. I think this definitely validates, a lot of what people say in terms of which Houston team to pick. I think it definitely validates getting, direct fan engagement. I think that's definitely borne out here. So there's not anything necessarily outside of that. Not that I can think of off the top of my head while I'm like in front of all these people, Now, 3:00 in the morning, I'll be like, damn.
Hey, we'll pre-record. Just hop on, man. Just let me know. Right. I mean, dude. And then Mike G said, hold on, let me get back to it. He said for your first live broadcast, he thinks you did great. And I agree, man. You did a good job. I know you were a little nervous coming into it, but I mean, how good has this conversation been? It's very relaxed, very, to the point. Yeah. I appreciate your research, your data, your time, your love for the sport, the passion, everything, man. Thank you for helping out, being a contributor and doing things for the league, not necessarily even for the show.
Right. Yeah. And then, like I said, with the fans, the people that are listening, I mean, we all have our preferences, but I like talking about this stuff with everybody. I have an iron sharpens iron approach. We don't have to agree. If you look at the data and you see something in it that maybe I didn't pull out, I mean, please, by all means, bring it up. I want to be able to understand more about what I'm pulling out. I mean, a lot of what I did was just data hunting and trying not to draw too many conclusions. Let's just see what information is out there and let's let the conclusions come to us rather than me saying, okay, I'm going to look for this.
Yeah, you're getting some good praise right now, man. Great job on your work, says Henry.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And then Brahma Babe said, excellent. But yeah, dude, I think you did a good job, man. Thank you for doing this. Like I said, the link will be in the notes. And click it, check it out, guys. You can find DeMarcus on Twitter, Facebook. Twitter, he's more active, in my opinion. But yeah, I'll have that as well. It's flashing there at the bottom, and I'll have a link to that in the show notes too. In terms of places to find you or anything you want to plug before you hop off.
Yeah, they can find me. Like I said, I'm more active on Facebook and Twitter. But I do want to, just like I said, plug if you know any teachers. Tell them to go to assignmentstogo.com. One of our goals is just to help get teachers, free tools and resources to help, with engagement, especially if you know a new teacher. They're always looking for stuff. Or if you have a high school child that's in high school, we've got some tools there that can help them study. We really want to create a positive online learning community for kids, so that we can get the emphasis back on education like it used to be. And, bring in some of the more modern day tools, because you would think that kids know how to use modern day tools to educate themselves. They don't. So
yeah, they know it for the wrong purposes, unfortunately.
Right.
Man, that's good that you're doing that, man. For real, I appreciate it, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who appreciate you out there. So keep doing your thing, dude. Much respect, much love. Keep on rocking, brother.
All right, thank you. I appreciate you guys too. And Matt, it's great talking to you. Look forward to doing it again.
Yes, sir. You have a good night, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, thank you. You too.
All right. Going to wrap it up. Appreciate DeMarcus again for tonight. Great conversation. He was a little nervous coming in. So, guys, if you watched, you paid attention, you like what you heard, follow him, show him some love. If you got some feedback, interact. Me, him, Avión, Mike, any of the guys that you want to talk to, interact with us. Send us messages, talk. We're friendly. We're not going to bite your head off for having a comment or discussion, even if it's somewhat negative to our cause or whatever. Much of what we're trying to do is non-biased news. And by news, it doesn't necessarily mean, CNN, Fox News type style. We want to sit down and talk about a topic, research it, figure out the basis for what the hell is going on. And honestly, you can't really do that in a 3 to 5 minute segment about something, or a 3 to 5 minute, article reading or whatever. It's getting people that have done the work, done the research, and having the discussions. And so that's what we're here for. If you guys know anybody that wants to come on the show that has a legit resume, as I said, let me know. We'll get them on. More discussions, the better. Really tried to give a good overview of resources for the XFL or spring football world since starting this, and it's gone really well. And I appreciate the fans, players, coaches, staffs, XFL board. Pleasure. So thank you again. If you were rubbed wrong by this information, you should definitely reanalyze what you're trying to do here with your support. Are you toxic? Are you a little bit bad? Because this isn't something that we're trying to bash one or the other. This is literally a sitting down and talking about these numbers that you can go look up yourself as well. Now, like he said, he did judge these in a certain setting, in a certain degree, so that it wasn't unfair or biased. And in that article, you can read more about it and understand exactly what he meant by that. That's it for me, guys. I'm tired. That was a long one. We didn't expect to stay on that long, honestly. Thanks to XFL for letting me cover. Hopefully we'll get some news soon of the league. There was some news of the Rock in DC a couple days ago. Something about military recruitment and such. So I don't think it's XFL related, honestly. And as well as I saw The Rock on Joe Rogan, listened to that, didn't hear a peep about the XFL really. So, I mean, just in case you guys did hear that or see that, it was about a 2.5 hour show or something like that. So anywho, we will not have a show probably until after Thanksgiving. So just keep that in mind. I will update the socials and let you know as soon as I have another show. But I mean, like I said, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse, and I'm about to do a little bit of traveling for the holidays. So look for something probably late November, early December, unless some news drops that we got to talk about. And then, of course, we'll do a last minute show. It's always a great pleasure. So appreciate you guys, and happy Thanksgiving to you. Happy Thanksgiving, Brahma Babe. I appreciate your support and you representing the league. I see you always commenting and showing the love. So thank you. And I appreciate everybody else who does the same. So it's greatly appreciated, and it really is motivation to keep going and just provide a good resource. As I said in the beginning of the show, or somewhat in the beginning, we do have some stuff coming out probably in the next week, and it's going to kind of solidify our movement here in news and alternative football news. And I look forward to getting that out and showing everybody what we've worked on and what we've done. The team that I have here is great, and I appreciate each and every one of them and their differences and the way they discuss and lay out problems. And I look forward to the collaboration that happens. You said, Kenneth said, when are we getting a remote / game day broadcast? I'll tell you what, if the season happens next year, I will do one for sure. My plan next year is to do some type of tour and then go to different stadiums and check everything out. If things work out like I want them to, then that will happen, and you guys will know for sure. It won't be a secret. Anywho, that's it for me. Please like, share, follow, comment, do whatever you need to do. Check out the show, check out the following, check out the leagues, XFL, USFL, whatever may happen, guys. I just want you to know I'm going to support it. Just don't flub up the marketing. Don't flub up the good things that you have. Keep doing what you're doing. And I look forward to this product, whether it's individual next year or merged, regardless. That's it for me, guys. Until we talk again, I'm going to go take it easy and enjoy my night. Peace out. Have a good one.